What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Fantasy Reserve. I'm Vitrano,
And I'm Matt.
and we're going to be going over some of the week four starts, sits, best options for you to win your fantasy week this upcoming week. But I wanted to start with how week three went. Matt, there were some very bad scoring games last week. There were some big surprises. Andy Dalton, for example, completely destroyed. Um, and then there were some disappointments like the tight ends. What did you see?
Yeah, I was really surprised at some of the upsets on the NFL schedule. Like you mentioned, Andy Dalton, he played pretty great. I was really surprised to see Zamir White only get 3 fantasy points. I talked about him last week because the Panthers have a really bottom tier rushing defense, but the Raiders rushing didn't really get anything done. And then I did mention Chuba Hubbard. I thought he would do decent, but he kind of blew my expectations out of the water, and he got about 27 fantasy points. So that was probably the biggest surprise for me last week.
Yeah, you mentioned the Panthers and the Raiders. Um, I'm very shocked. I don't want to say I'm too shocked by Andy Dalton performing well. He did play very well when he was in the game last year. So I don't want to say that I'm too shocked that he performed very well. Zamir White continues to be a disappointment, obviously. I was very high on him coming into this season when Antonio Pierce was talking about performing and giving the running back like 20 carries a game, you know what I mean? And we just haven't seen that. Along with that, some of my biggest surprises overall is Bo Nix performing really well against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Malik Willis scoring 22 points against the Titans.
Yeah, I think the Bucks kind of just show what they showed last year. Like sometimes they look awesome, and sometimes they just completely like kind of ruin a week for fantasy points. And that's what happened this time. Like Baker Mayfield will pop off, but sometimes he'll get like 10 points like he did this week.
Yeah, so that being said, let's get right into these week four games and start with the Cowboys and the Giants on Thursday Night Football. Tell me about what you're thinking on these plays here.
So I know the Giants beat the Browns surprisingly last week, but I'm still not really high on any Giants players. You can't expect like week to week production out of them. Daniel Jones still remains pretty like unreliable. Malik Neighbors he looks really good still, but yeah, you can't really rely on the Giants players. In terms of the Cowboys, I think Dak kind of showed us last week that he'll get it done fantasy wise. He is the highest paid NFL quarterback right now, and he's kind of showing his worth there. But CD Lamb's kind of been a letdown so far. I mean, last year he kind of was the same way, and then he just popped off at the end of the year. So CD Lamb's gonna pop off this season. Like he's too good of a receiver to not get those pop off games, but he's not popping off yet. So I mean, if you have CD Lamb, you play him every single week. That doesn't change. But I think the Cowboys could definitely be in for a really good game with Dak and CD Lamb.
Yeah, and you know what? I fully expect the Cowboys to handle this game pretty well. But there are some concerns for me as far as the Cowboys, uh, especially fantasy wise. I'm not starting anybody in that running back room. Rico Dowdle carried the ball last week for 32 yards as the leading back. Ezekiel Elliott had five less carries for 6 yards, so I'm completely avoiding them. As far as the receivers, it doesn't look like Brandon Cooks was too involved for the Cowboys, so I'm going to completely ignore him and wait until they want to get him more involved. It was nice to see Jake Ferguson back. I do have him in our fantasy league, and I was very sad because I drafted him as my number one tight end when he got hurt in week one. So it's nice to see him back and producing. Like you said, CeeDee Lamb is one of those guys who is a must start along with Dak. But when we go to the Giants, I disagree with you a little bit in that aspect. I am pretty high on Malik Neighbors. I was very critical of him to go into this year. I did not think that Daniel Jones was going to be able to elevate Malik Neighbors, but it turns out Malik Neighbors doesn't need any elevating. He's currently the number one fantasy wide receiver, and I have him in only one league, and it is the league that we're in with friends of ours. So he's shocking me, and I'm sure he's shocking everybody with how well he's doing. But I think the real person that I want to talk about right now, as far as who's going to be successful this week, I think could be uh, Devin Singletary. And I say that because, granted, Derrick Henry isn't Devin Singletary, but Derrick Henry just ran 150 yards on this defense. And Singletary has been, he's been playing really well fantasy wise. I'm very shocked by his production. What do you think about that, Matt?
I'm a Devin Singletary fan. He was like last year when you needed a running back off the waiver wires, and because for whatever reason you needed just that extra running back off the waivers. Devin Singletary was kind of my go-to. So I'm not really super surprised to see him like performing better this year. I think he is showing up a lot more this year. So I have to agree. I think Devin Singletary is probably a good solid pickup and a good start this week if you need to start one.
Yeah. Other than that, Wandale Robinson is a very solid, person to have on your bench just in case something does happen to neighbors. Otherwise, I think I'm still gonna sit Daniel Jones despite his performances the last 2 weeks. If he does something this week against Dallas, I'll reconsider. But still don't trust him. And obviously, you're gonna go ahead and start neighbors in this spot. Uh, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I was asked in person for some fantasy advice today, actually, and it was for QBs. It was between should he pick up Andy Dalton, Daniel Jones, or Bo Nix, and I think out of those three, I'm gonna go Andy Dalton because Morales is probably gonna be a little higher on the Panthers. Daniel Jones is a little risky. I think Bo Nix is also a good consideration. So out of those three, I would go Bo Nix or Andy Dalton. But I think the out of Daniel Jones would be the last I choose out of those.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with that. I don't really care to. I jumped on the Daniel Jones train last year before he got hurt, and he scored me negative points. So I'm gonna stay away from that.
All right.
But
So
yeah,
the next
go
game
ahead.
up is the Saints and the Falcons. What do you think, Vitrano?
So here's the thing. Again, I'm a I love Derek Carr. Um, I'm not gonna start Derek Carr this week. I know he's been playing very well, but I'm not gonna start him this week against a tough divisional foe in the Atlanta Falcons. And this is a team who last week played against Mahomes, and I'm gonna be honest, Mahomes did not play that well. He scored 17 fantasy points, but he only threw 217 yards, and he had two touchdowns and a pick. But like he had more points than I feel like he should have had last week, or he did better than what the numbers said. I don't see Derek Carr having that same type of week. I think he's not going to perform as well. I think this is going to be a game for the Saints that's going to be a lot of dump passes to Kamara. So I would go ahead and start Kamara. Um, and I think that the receivers are probably going to struggle a little bit, Olave and Rashid Shaheed versus this very tough Atlanta secondary. What do you think?
Yeah, I think what we're kind of seeing with the Saints passing offense is, Rashid Shaheed will go off 1 week, and then like last week he got pretty much no points. We kind of saw that last year as well. And Olave, he's kind of the same way. If Rashid Shaheed gets the points, then Olave doesn't get anything, and vice versa. And so it's kind of random. Like you can't really tell who's going to pop that week. So you kind of have to just gamble it. It seems like. And then on the Falcons. Uh, I'm not really seeing too much out of their passing offense. And Bijan, I'm a huge Bijan fan, but he's not really getting a ton done fantasy wise. So you're going to start him no matter what, but I'm not super excited about any of the offensive players this week for these two games.
I'm gonna go ahead and agree. For the most part, I do think that both of these teams have really, really great players that are very fantasy viable in pretty much any other week. But it's going to be a very low scoring game, I imagine. The Saints last week held Jalen Hurts to 8 points in fantasy. They did give up 33 points to Barkley, so I imagine obviously Bijan is going to be the number one option for this Atlanta offense. And there's a good chance that he performs very well and runs all over this New Orleans defense. But as far as the passing game is concerned, I'm not gonna, be too high on Kyle Pitts or Drake London or Kirk Cousins for that matter. I don't feel good about anybody but the running backs in these games.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kamara is probably going to be the best player out of those two games or out of these two teams. Next game up is the Bengals versus the Panthers. And I'm going to maybe not so bold anymore, but I'm going to say a bold take. I think the Panthers are going to beat the Bengals. I think the Panthers are coming off some high morale off a like pretty dominating win, and the Bengals they're 0-3. I think morale's a little low for them, so I'm going to have to go with the Panthers. I'm going to say Chuba Hubbard's a good idea if you need to start him, and Andy Dalton is a good idea if you need to start him. And Deontay Johnson was looking pretty clean last game, so he's looking pretty good too.
Yeah, you know what? I love Deontay Johnson this week. Um, this is a guy who, again, in our fantasy league, I had on the bench last week. Wasn't sure exactly what he was going to do. He commanded 14 targets, got 8 catches for 122 yards and a touchdown, and he completely blew what my expectations were of this week out of the water. I'm definitely going to be starting him this week, especially because Adam Thielen just got put on the IR. He's going to get a lot more targets, and especially if Andy Dalton continues to be the quarterback, he's going to throw the ball a lot. He threw 37 passes last week. That's quite a lot. So I know Deontay's going to get his targets. As far as the Bengals are concerned, Joe Burrow received a lot of hate this last week. I'm going to particularly call out Shannon Sharp, who said Burrow did not do enough to win this game, and call him an idiot. He played football for a long time. You know what it takes to win these games. And to blame the quarterback that threw no interceptions, turned the ball over not a single time, scored on every single possession, including 3 touchdown passes and 300 yards passing, and say that he didn't do enough, you have to be some kind of moron. I'm sorry. I believe in everybody, honestly, in this game. I think that this is going to be quite a good game. Jamar Chase, it looks like he's back to form, although not a lot of targets going his way last week. Made up for it by catching 2 touchdowns. Zach Moss only got 12 carries, but made the most of him. Got 58 yards and a touchdown, and caught six targets, 5 catches out of the backfield. Very fantasy viable. I love pretty much everybody in this game. I even love Mike Gesicki, who's commanding targets now in this offense for some reason over the wide receiver three.
Yeah, I love Zach Moss. I'm starting him in my leagues. Next game up is Rams and Bears. So for the Rams, I think, they don't have pretty much any of their starters right now, and they managed to pull one out over the 49ers. Kyron Williams went insane, 3 touchdowns. So Kyron Williams, easily slammed him as a start, 100%. Stafford's not looking too bad this season, so I think Stafford's a good consideration if you need a QB to start. And for the Bears, what do you think, Vitrano?
So I'm gonna start by stating with the Rams. I'm not high on Stafford this week. I'm gonna go ahead and bench him. This Bears defense has shown a lot of toughness again, especially against these quarterbacks. They've limited the quarterbacks very well through these first couple of weeks. Richardson had 2 interceptions last week versus the Bears. CJ Stroud the week before didn't play so hot himself. He got only 14 points. So I'm going to go ahead and sit Matthew Stafford. I do think Kyron Williams is going to feast on this Chicago defense. He's going to be the most viable person for the Rams. As far as Chicago's concerned, I think that this is as good of a week as any to start Caleb Williams. The Rams defense is pretty bad. And I know they just beat the 49ers, my favorite team, your favorite team. It is what it is, but they're bad. Brock Purdy just threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, no turnovers versus them. I imagine Caleb Williams can have a very similar day. DeAndre Swift is just bad. He's not going to do anything. But this wide receiver room, his Caleb Williams, he's starting to build that rapport with them on the field. I think that any one of these receivers could have a very great day. DJ Moore is always a must start. Keenan Allen should be considered, and Rome Odunze, if Keenan Allen doesn't play, I think is also a start. I think this is his week. Honestly, I think if Chicago is going to win a game at any point with their offense, it's probably going to be this week.
Yeah, the Bears actually have the seventh best passing defense so far this season. I will say I'm not super convinced yet because Anthony Richardson doesn't strike me as the best like passing QB out there, but they did limit CJ Stroud, like Vitrano mentioned, and CJ Stroud. I'm a huge CJ Stroud fan, so we'll see how this week goes. And then if they limit Stafford pretty heavily, I think I'll be getting convinced. Next game up is the Vikings versus the Packers. How about you tell us about that, Vitrano?
So when it comes to the Vikings and the Packers, I think we're seeing some very interesting things out of Minnesota from Sam Darnold. He is, shockingly up to this point. I know we're talking week 4 through 3 weeks, but he's a front runner for MVP. He's been playing very well. He's limited his turnovers, which is pretty shocking to see because this is a guy who, in most of his or at least half of the seasons where he was a starter, had more interceptions than he had touchdowns, and didn't do so hot with the Jets. I do love to see him performing well. He's going at the QB number 4 currently right now, and he's performing. Uh, this Green Bay defense, however, they're no slouches. They've played very well. They did play against Will Levis. I'm not going to count that last week, but this is a good defense. I think Aaron Jones is a very solid start every week. He's exceeding expectations again. A lot of haters out there. We even have people in our league that aren't fans of Aaron Jones that much. I think he's a great pick. I love him this week versus Green Bay. And obviously, I love Justin Jefferson. And if Addison plays, gonna love Addison as well. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I like Addison a lot. I remember last season we played the 49ers. He got like 2 touchdowns and he got the ball ripped out of his hands and then he did like a revenge type moment where he ripped the ball back out of the defender's hands and he got a touchdown. So I think Addison has a lot of talent. And Justin Jefferson, he's arguably the best receiver in the league. He'll get it done no matter who the QB is. He could have Bryce Young throw into him and he'd get like 5 touchdowns in a game. Josh
Sounds too
Jacobs.
crazy now. Hold on.
Josh Jacobs, like I mentioned last week, he's like a little steamboat engine. He's slow and steady, but the Vikings have a very solid rush defense. I'm not really expecting too much out of Josh Jacobs this week. I'm still going to start him because they give him the ball a lot. He's the running back 1 for that team, but I'm not super high on him this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and agree. Honestly, I'm not too keen on anybody in this Green Bay offense this week. The Vikings defense has quietly, and I say quietly because I feel like nobody has really talked about how good the Vikings defense has been so far this year. But when you look at the stats, they have limited quarterbacks that they played to 10.62 fantasy points a game. They've only allowed 2 total touchdowns over the first 3 weeks. And I believe both of those were to Brock Purdy, or at least one of them was to Brock Purdy, but it wasn't, they've limited quarterbacks. They are the 7th best at limiting quarterbacks, and they're pretty much the same at running backs. They're the 6th best defense against running backs in fantasy. They've only allowed 171 rushing yards. That's the 3rd least in the entire NFL. I don't like anybody in this Green Bay offense, especially with Jordan Love coming back. And if he comes back, and if Malik Willis comes back, I feel scared for him. I think that they're going to have a rough day.
Yeah, I like Jaden Reed. I think he's pretty good with Jordan Love, but I will have to agree. I think the Vikings defense is not being talked about enough. The Vikings defense is top tier this season. Next game up is the Jaguars versus the Texans. So the Jaguars, they played the Bills yesterday, Monday night, and the Jaguars looked very lost. You know, they're 0-3. They got pretty much blown out by the Bills. ETN, I think he's a good fantasy player, but the Bills as a team are they need to rework something. What do you think, Vitrano?
Yeah, I'm very disappointed with Trevor Lawrence this season. I don't think it's entirely his fault. I mean, we watched the games yesterday. This is a guy who literally was under duress the entire game. His offensive line did not hold up. He's getting charged at. I watched one play in particular. I think you had pointed it out too while we were watching, where he did a spin move. Um, to try and get out of the middle of the line, and his lineman had already let the guy go and just ran right into him, blindside hit. You know, he's taking hits now. He's taking a lot of hits. I don't think that it's his fault, but this Jags offense is just bad. Etienne is always a must start. You know, some way, somehow he manages to get like yardage even at the end of the game when they're losing by 30. I put a bet in yesterday, Etienne over 50 rushing yards. And this dude on the last, what, two drives that they had, while down 30, still was in the game, still was breaking off 14, 20-yard rushes, and managed to score 12 points. Well, not great. 12 points is still 12 points. As far as you know, the receivers are concerned, I think this team needs Evan Ingram back really bad. I think that him being out is detrimental to their offense and it limits a lot of things. But I do think Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk are finally starting to get things done. What do you think about Houston?
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing about the Jags. I have to agree, it's not Trevor Lawrence's fault completely. His O line really is not defending him. I don't know why he did hit that little spin move, but as soon as he did, yeah, he was just like sacked like right after that, I think. So, yeah, he's not getting protected enough. In terms of the Texans, I'm I like the Texans. I really like CJ Stroud. I like that he came in as a rookie and just completely played like so well. He's very humble. I really like CJ Stroud a lot. I think he's pretty much elevating that team to very new heights. I think he's going to tear up the Jags personally. So CJ Stroud, I'm always happy to start. Um, in terms of receivers, I think Nico Collins, you know, you got to start him. It's just a little, you're always a little worried that maybe like, you know, Diggs will have the pop off game or Tank Dell will have the pop off game, and you're one out of your three receivers are going to get those points. But I think you just kind of have to gamble it and always start the Texans.
Yeah, you know what? I have to agree. I love all of the Texans this week. I think that this is going to be the Texans, comeback game from their very disappointing showing last week versus Minnesota. Very tough defense again. Jaguars, not so much. Um, I don't know if Mixon is going to play. I don't really think that it matters. I think CJ Stroud will play very well against a mediocre Jaguars defense. Obviously, Nico Collins is going to feast. Stephon Diggs, I think, could have a solid game. Tank Dell, I'm still going to sit because one, he's dealing with some injuries, and two, he's, excuse me, clearly the wide receiver three. But other than that, I think this is going to be a good game for Houston.
Yep, I agree. Next up, we got the Steelers and the Colts. Petrano, what do you think?
I have been very critical of the Steelers this upcoming year, um, or this during this year. I have been very, very critical of the Steelers, specifically Justin Fields. Now, when I see Justin Fields and I saw him play last week, that was the Justin Fields I wanted to see. The one that was getting it done with the rushing touchdown. He's starting to look a lot more solid as the weeks progress in his offense. And you know what? Indianapolis's defense is horrible. I think that this is a very good week for Justin Fields to start. I do also think that this is a good week for Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, maybe not Warren exactly, but Najee to get back. To he can get these 70 rushing yards that he has literally, and I'm just now looking at this. He's had 70 yards, 69 yards, and 70 yards in the last 3 weeks. I think he will probably continue on that pace versus a bad Indianapolis defense. And George Pickens is going to be definitely a must start in this game. He's probably going to find a lot of openings against Indy. I'm even going to start Pat Fryermuth, who has been quietly one of the more solid tight end options. That's not saying much. He's currently has like 20 fantasy points, and he's currently the tight end 12. Um, I just love the Pittsburgh offense against Indy. I think Indy is probably going to struggle here. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think everybody on the Steelers offense is a good start into the Colts defense. I think Pickens is a great player. I think he's a must start. Even think Najee is gonna, do pretty well this week, at least above his average. I feel like Najee is like a very solid, like 10 point a week running back. I think he's probably gonna get a little more than that against the Colts defense. In terms of the Colts, I think Richardson's a start for sure because Richardson will get those points, but against the Steelers defense, I don't really think any of his weapons are going to get any points. Like he's not really connecting with Pittman at all. Pittman's been a huge disappointment so far this season. I know that as a Pittman owner this year. So I'm not really looking forward to starting anybody on the Colts besides maybe Anthony Richardson. But then again, he is going against the Steelers defense. TJ Watt's going to be all over him. But I think you still start him just because he has that potential for points. But yeah, I'm probably sitting all the Colts this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I I don't think that if I had the option of starting another quarterback over Anthony Richardson, I don't think I would start Anthony Richardson. Obviously, depending on the quarterback, but he does have a lot of upside still. I know a lot of people are probably going to start him. I just think that this is going to be a very rough game and a very tough learning point for him against probably the best defensive line in the entire league in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Along with that, obviously Jonathan Taylor's always a must start. There's no question about it. But there again, he's going up against a very tough defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was limited to 10 points or less in this game. Or if he barely gets to 10, it might be because they get one touchdown. Um, just like you said, I don't like Pittman. He's been horrible this year. 7 points, 5 points, and 7 points in PPR. I don't like him either. That's pretty much all I got to say about the Colts.
Yeah, I think we could just move on from that game. Let's go to the Broncos and the Jets. So, yeah, I don't know about Bo Nix starting to the Jets defense. He did a really good job last week, but it's still the Jets defense, one of the upper tier defenses in the league. What are your thoughts, Vitrano? Are you starting anybody on the Broncos?
Um, Definitely not Bo Nix. The Jets have the third best uh, points per game against quarterbacks, with only allowing 9.24 points per game. Um, I don't see Bo Nix having a very successful game this week. Like you said, the Jets defense is very tough. Once they're starting to get going again, I think that they are going to limit this Broncos offense. We are not going to see an upset against the Jets like we did versus the Buccaneers last week. At least not against Aaron Rodgers. I hate the running backs in this room. Javonte Williams, as much as everybody thinks that he's going to bounce back, he has been horrible. 2.8 yards per carry week 1, 1.5 week 2, 2.4 week 3. It's not going to get any better versus the Jets. Um, Jaleel McLaughlin, a little more, fantasy relevance, people think. I disagree. He hasn't done absolutely anything. I think everybody on this Broncos team is worth a sit. As far as the Jets, I think that the Jets, Aaron Rodgers, uh, should be a start. I think he finds ways to get it done after having a poor game against the 49ers. He had a decent game against a very tough Tennessee defense and a very good game against a decently tough New England defense. I think he gets it done. Brees Hall is obviously a must start. Garrett Wilson is obviously a must start. And you know what? If you don't have any better options, if you're looking for a fringe wide receiver 3 or flex, I might even lean toward Alan Lazard.
Yeah, I think those are all very good points. I wasn't the biggest Brees Hall believer last year, but after watching him this year, I'm thinking like, man, that might have been the running back to draft this year as your running back one if you had the opportunity. So Vitrano, before we move on, tell me your thoughts on Tyler Conklin because he's been getting a little bit of work in the Jets offense.
Yeah, you know what? I have always been a solid believer in Tyler Conklin over the last couple of years. I've had him in my dynasty league since 2021 when he was solid on Minnesota, and I still have him. I think that this is a guy who, you know what, he's had at least 55 catches over the last 3 years. He's been tight end 16, 16 and 18 over the last 3 years. And obviously 2022 and 2023 were with Zach Wilson at quarterback. So I think that last week showed he can get involved in this offense. Denver, again, not a very good team by any means. I think that they've played a little better than what people expected them to. I think he's a solid option if you need a tight end now. I would consider picking him up at least as a backup. There are some weeks where he's going to pop off.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He'll definitely have those pop off weeks. And he's probably one of the better backups to hold. So the next game up on the schedule is the Eagles versus the Buccaneers. And I feel like both these teams are kind of similar. Like they will completely have a bad week and lose, or they'll play the next week and they'll completely like blow out the other team. So I feel like they're kind of the same on that front. So the Eagles, yeah, Saquon has been absolutely insane the past 3 weeks. Two 30-point games. So Saquon, I have Saquon. I'm so excited to start him. Jalen Hurts, he's Jalen Hurts. He's gonna get the tush push and get you some points. I think AJ Brown's still out, right, Bertrano?
Yeah, I believe if I my memory serves correctly, actually, I can look here. I'm pretty sure he's out for this upcoming week. I don't believe that he's been at practice at all. Uh, and even if he was, you know what, I'm not really too keen on starting him immediately. I know he's probably a must start when he comes back, but I think that there's a good chance he doesn't play. That makes Philadelphia's offense very scary. Barkley, as you said, is obviously amazing. Jalen Hurts is always a must start, and the Buccaneers defense just gave up like 20 points to Bo Nix, so I think that's enough said. Devonte Smith, actually, I don't believe he's going to play this week either, which kind of scares me for the Philadelphia offense. Um,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
got
I
concussion. I don't know if you've seen that. You saw that clip, Matt, but he had a very scary concussion.
I think I might have heard of it, but I don't think I saw the clip or know too much about it. So I kind of feel like this could be a high scoring game, like kind of a shootout, Vetrano, and I feel good about starting like, all the offensive players in this game. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm going to say that this is going to be a very offensive loaded matchup. Um, the one thing I will say is Rashad White is about to lose his job. He did have 5 catches last week against Denver, only got 6 carries though. It shows that he's about to lose his job in the running game to Bucky Irving. Uh, and you know what? I'm here for it. Bucky Irving looks great. 9 carries for 70 yards, 7.78 yards per carry last week, 11 points. He didn't even score a touchdown. And he was a very solid back last week. And so that being said, I am pretty scared of the running backs. I wouldn't start either of them versus Philadelphia's defensive line. But as far as the receivers and the quarterbacks are concerned, I'm all in on those.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then next game up is also what I probably would predict to be a high scoring game is the Commanders and the Cardinals. So I think one of the like very surprising wins was the Commanders. The Commanders like really great. The quarterback threw a very nice deep pass to Terry McLaurin, and then Jane Daniels also just had that rushing touchdown where he pretty much walked in and then did a little hop at the end. So I think that the Commanders players are a great start against the Cardinals, and I think all the Cardinals players are going to be a great start against the Commanders. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I said it yesterday to you guys. It's nice to see Jaden Daniels being allowed to throw the ball deep and not just being limited in a very college-esque offense. He is one of the best deep ballers. He was one of the best deep ballers, sorry, last year in college football. He can throw this ball, and they let him do it last week. It showed he had two very deep touchdown passes, and he looked great. 21 of 23 for two touchdowns, 39 rushing yards on the ground, and another rushing touchdown. He did have his struggles against the Giants, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'm definitely starting Jaden Daniels. It's nice to see Terry McLaurin finally looking like he's being targeted again in this offense. I think that as long as he continues to be targeted on those deep balls and the coach lets Jane Daniels rip it, I think Terry McLaurin would be fantasy viable. And Brian Robinson once again found the end zone despite struggling on the ground. Did find the end zone, and I imagine that he's going to find some success here versus the Cardinals. Austin Eckler even had some success, but he is in concussion protocol. I will say it might be time to stash Luke McCaffrey on your bench if you haven't already. It seems like he might be coming for that wide receiver two role. As far as the Cardinals are concerned, my play of the week this week is Kyler Murray. I think that this is his week to be great versus, again, a very, very bad Washington defense versus quarterbacks. They're still the worst. Give up 24.38 fantasy points per game. It's not going to be any different versus Kyler Murray. And everybody in this offense for Arizona must start. James Conner must start. Marvin Harrison must start. Trey McBride must start. What do you think, Matt?
So I will say Trey McBride is actually also in a concussion protocol, so we don't really know if he's going to start this week. And if he doesn't, the next person up on the depth chart is Elijah Higgins. So that might be kind of like the sleeper pickup of the week, because if you can get Elijah Higgins to start, you're gonna be in the most like high-powered offense against one of the worst defenses. So yeah, that could be the sleeper of the week to help you win that matchup.
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely agree. I even think Michael Wilson, stashing a sneaky Michael Wilson on your bench could benefit you in the long run just in case. It might be a good cuff.
Yeah, I think if you need a player this week off the waivers, the Cardinals, that would be a nice little sleeper. So our next game up is Vitrano's diehard team, also my favorite team, the 49ers versus the Patriots.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna call out every Brock Purdy hater right now. This guy, and we have these arguments with people that we talk to every day, our friends, really hate Brock Purdy. They don't think he's a good quarterback. Honestly, I don't get it. You say that he can't do it without his weapons. He goes into LA, throws for 300 passing yards, three touchdowns. He did fumble once, added 41 rushing yards on the ground, and everybody blamed the 49ers loss on Brock Purdy and not Jake Moody missing the field goal or Ronnie Bell dropping a wide open pass to go down the field and get us back into field goal position to win this game. Brock Purdy deserves more respect. He has been one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL over the last 2 years, and the hate that he gets is too much. That being said, this could be a tough game for him versus New England's defense. This isn't a light defense. Uh, I think that he could struggle I'm still going to start him because obviously we're in Superflex and I need two quarterbacks, and I'm not starting Derek Carr over him. But you know what? There, if you have a better option, if you have a better matchup, I would consider benching Brock Purdy this week. Jordan Mason gonna be a must start as long as Christian McCaffrey isn't playing, and Christian McCaffrey's all the way in Germany dealing with some injury. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna go ahead and keep starting Jordan Mason. Um, as far as the receivers and George Kittle, if the receivers play, they start. Debo, if he's playing, he starts. Brandon Ayuk, he's obviously playing, he's starting. George Kittle, if he plays, he starts. That's how good this offense is. Now, if Debo and Kittle don't play again, Juwan Jennings, 12 catches, 12 targets, 11 catches for 175 yards last week and three touchdowns. You're probably not going to get that same type of efficiency from him this week, but he should still have a very good week as a solid wide receiver three flex spot if both of those guys are out. If you have him, pay attention to the injury report. What do you think, Matt?
So I actually have another question for you, Vitrano, because I actually need you to educate me here. So why do you think the Patriots are going to be a difficult matchup for the 49ers? Because I'm looking at the stats for this current season, and the Patriots have allowed 772 passing yards. That's towards the very bottom. So what makes them a difficult defense?
So when it comes to fantasy wise, it's their ability to limit the touchdowns that are being scored. Don't get me wrong, this is a bad team. This is a very bad team that can't, figure out a whole lot, but their defense for some reason always manages to be at least a little bit good or very good. Um, and this year, through three games, they've only allowed three touchdown passes so far. That being, a big part of fantasy production, it limits my ability or my want to start quarterbacks versus them because they're just not giving up any passing touchdowns. So Brock Purdy, while he is the number two passing leader in the NFL, and the Patriots do give up a lot of passing yards, the fact that they haven't had many touchdowns scored on them is what takes me away from starting Purdy.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, I don't really understand the Purdy hate either. I think Purdy is a very solid quarterback, and I think if you just watch him play, you can kind of see that. He's one of the few quarterbacks in the NFL that throws with like such good anticipation. If you watch him throw, he throws the ball where his receiver is running into. A lot of quarterbacks throw at the receiver. Purdy will throw the ball, and his receivers will literally just drive by, run into it, and keep running. And that's a pretty high tier that a lot of quarterbacks don't really do. Do you have anything to add on these two games, Vitrano, or should we move on to the next?
I will say, please don't start Jacoby Brissett. You can find someone better. Demario Douglas, I am very much considering Demario Douglas in a flex spot. I'm not even kidding. This is their best receiver, in my opinion. I imagine he is going to demand most of the targets. He was targeted 9 times versus the Jets defense last week and caught 7 balls for 69 yards. He is a good option for a flex. Ramondre, you know what? I'm still going to start him against the 49ers because he's still probably one of the better fantasy options and he's involved. And Hunter Henry, probably, if you have Hunter Henry, you're probably going to start him just because the Titans are so horrible.
Yeah, since you bring up Demario Douglas, I will talk about him a little bit. Last year, I did have him on my bench. I thought he was a really good stash, like just as that wide receiver three tier. Um, I'm not really super high on him this season yet. I do like him as a player. It's just the offense is so bad. Like I don't really think he's going to get much production, but he definitely is one of the players that I tend to look at when I'm looking at the waiver wires and stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Definitely keep Demario Douglas in mind when you're thinking of picking up waiver picks this week.
Yeah, that's the best way to say it. Just keep him in mind. All right, so next we're going to the Chiefs and the Chargers. So like Vitrano mentioned, Patrick Mahomes isn't really getting too much like fantasy value. I'm not super excited about any of the Chiefs players except Rashee Rice. I wasn't a believer in Rashee Rice, but he's getting so many like targets and production. I think, Rashee Rice is a must start for sure. John, what do you think about Rashee Rice?
Yeah, absolutely must start. I read somewhere that Rashee Rice actually has the most broken tackles for a receiver. I believe that's what the stat said in the entire NFL, and it's not close. He is demanding targets, 14 targets last week, 100 over 100 yards in two of the games so far this year, two touchdowns. He is the number one receiver. He he's the number one guy in that offense. I think we're done with the times of Travis Kelsey. He's projected for 13 points this week. He's not getting that. And if he does, I don't really care. Travis Kelsey's bad this year. His time is over. The future is now, old man. Pack it up. Give the opportunities to Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. You're never going to bench Mahomes. Carson Steele, people picked up Carson Steele with like 30 something dollars in waiver. Didn't happen in our league, only $11 spent, but I did see some other people, they did get Carson Steele for like 30, $40 of fab. Not doing it. He wasn't worth it. He did lead the team with 72 rushing yards, but he wasn't involved in the passing game at all. And this is a very tough Chargers defense. Also, Kareem Hunt just got signed to the active roster, and I imagine he's going to take some touches away. What do you think?
Yeah, I wasn't super excited to spend fab for any of these running backs on the Chiefs. I'm not like super excited about it, and I'm just kind of I have Pacheco in one of my leagues. I'm just honestly kind of just holding out until he gets back, and hopefully like 6 to 8 weeks. I think we might see better opportunities down the line for fab. I don't think we've seen many good fab opportunities yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. What do you think about the Chargers?
Uh, I don't know. I don't really think much about the Chargers. I'm not excited about anybody in that offense.
Yeah, uh, you know, Justin Herbert dealing with a high ankle sprain. Uh, he got hurt against the Steelers last week. I do see that his X-ray came back negative, and he's going to be monitored leading up to this week. I don't think he's start worthy either way. He's hasn't been all year, and this is a very run first now offense. Um, so I don't think Herbert it has any fantasy value for probably the remainder of the year. I'm going to be honest. Along with that, I don't see anybody in this offense as far as receivers are concerned having any fantasy value. It seems like Quentin Johnson might be uh, stepping out into his own and being that receiver that they drafted him to be, a couple years ago. So that would be nice. But otherwise, this looks like it's going to be the J.K. Dobbins show for the most part through all of these games. And, the Chiefs are pretty good against the run, third least points allowed to running backs so far this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. If you start anybody, it's going to be J.K. Dobbins. He's doing pretty good this season. Just by sheer volume, volume equals fantasy production. J.K. Dobbins is going to be that fantasy producer. But yeah, I don't feel great starting him into the Chiefs, but just volume wise, he'll get you points. Is what I think.
All right, so that being said, we can go right into Buffalo against Baltimore, the Sunday night football game. Who do you have in this, Matt?
Honestly, the Bills just look so clean right now. Like I do think the Ravens are a great team, but I think the Bills are going to take it. Josh Allen, he's the number one QB producer. I think Shakir is playing excellent. I think I saw a stat. You can correct me, Vitrano. I don't think Khalil Shakir has dropped any, or he has like 100% like catch rate so far this season. I'll have to double check that. But Shakir looks great. I'm a Shakir fan. I have Shakir. Um, and then James Cook, he's having a kind of a breakout season. I wasn't really a fan of him last year, but he's playing excellent this year. I think the Bills just have too much of a high powered offense. While the Ravens, Lamar will get you those points no matter what. Lamar is a fantasy producer, but he just doesn't have enough weapons. He doesn't throw the ball enough either. So he doesn't throw the ball enough, and he's not connecting with Mark Andrews. Isaiah Likely is not guaranteed, and then Zay Flowers, he's the number one receiver, but he's not the guaranteed guy every week. So I think I have to go with the Bills, and I'm happy about any Bills start this week.
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely agree. I can confirm, looking at Khalil Shakir's stats, he has not dropped a single pass so far this year. Is a total of 14 targets for 14 catches and two touchdowns, averaging about 12 yards per catch. So he's doing really well. He's stepping in, just like, you know what, a lot of people said, a lot of people were very high on Khalil Shakir going into this season. I loved Shakir in the offseason. I thought he was going to be the number one guy. I'm really happy that he's showing who he is and being that fantasy relevant guy. James Cook is obviously doing very well, much better than a lot of people expected him to do. I think a lot of people kind of expected him to continue with his fumbling problem and get taken over by the rookie Ray Davis. Don't really see that. James Cook is in firm control of this backfield. Kincaid, with so little amount of tight end production, obviously you're going to start him. I love the entire Buffalo offense, as you said. And you know what? As far as Baltimore, Lamar is obviously a must start. Derrick Henry is a must start. There are some concerns for me everywhere else on this team. Last week in the win versus Dallas, Lamar Jackson threw the ball 15 times. The previous weeks, he threw it 41 and 34 times. Obviously, those were two games that they were, playing behind in. Not Las Vegas so much, but Kansas City for sure, where it kind of required it. But Lamar, he slimmed down, and it looks like he's using his legs a lot more. He had 14 rushing attempts last week for 87 yards and a touchdown. He's not going to get the receivers involved that much. Mark Andrews looks like he fell off a cliff, and Isaiah Likely doesn't look like he is as much involved in this offense as everybody, including myself, thought he would be after week one. So I'm definitely going to go ahead and start Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, but these other guys, I have some skepticism. Also, Justin Tucker might be falling off a cliff. It might be time to hang it up.
Yeah, Lamar threw the ball like 15 times, and just in put that in comparison, I think Dak threw the ball like about 50 times. Um, I have to say that I didn't think Likely was going to be super involved in the offense. I didn't go spend any fab on him. I didn't try to pick him up on waivers. I had a feeling he wasn't. That was just like a really good first standout game. I don't think he was like going to replace Mark Andrews at all. And Vitrano, I think you just wanted to block out this matchup or block it out. That we do have the Browns and the Raiders to talk about.
Yeah, I hate both of them. I'm not gonna lie. I skipped over it because I hate both of them. Actually, no, it was an accident. But I do hate both of them. Gardner Minshew is not going to play very well versus Cleveland. Zamir White, you can just drop him now. He's not worth it. Devonte Adams is obviously a must start in all aspects, and so is Brock Bowers. As far as Cleveland is concerned, Deshaun Watson continues to play horrible. Jerome Ford, I don't even know what they're doing with him in this offense. This was a guy that led the backfield last year and was successful, and he's not being utilized the way that he should because they want to use Deontay Foreman and give him carries and get other running backs involved. Stop being so stupid, Cleveland. You have too good of a team. Amari Cooper, thankfully, found the end zone last week. I have him in a couple leagues. I love Amari Cooper. I'm happy to see him performing, but I really just want David Njoku back. I have David Njoku in so many leagues, Matt, and he got hurt week one. It's so disappointing. I just want him back.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. Yeah, that's just a gross matchup. And then another gross, nasty matchup is the Titans versus the Dolphins. I think the number one player to start is Achan. I think the Dolphins will just use him and run him into the ground. It doesn't matter. Maybe McDaniel has Achan on his fantasy teams and he's in a high money league because he will just give Achan the ball 30 times. He'll give it to him in garbage time. Like they do not care about his health. He will get you those fantasy points.
Yeah, as you said, absolutely. Devani Chan, definitely a must start in all formats, all aspects, but this is going to be a very tough game for Miami. Tennessee, we have seen what they've done to these quarterbacks somehow over the last couple of games. Obviously, they gave up quite a number of points to Malik Willis, of all people, but prior to that, they had a good, decent showing against one Caleb Williams, and they even limited Aaron Rodgers pretty well. Skylar Thompson is not the quarterback that's going to get it done. Tyreek Hill only had 5 targets last week. Skylar Thompson only threw the ball 19 times, whereas Achan had 11 carries and was targeted as many times as Tyreek. I really hate everybody in this Miami offense except for Devon Achan, and I know that Tyreek is that guy who's going to get started no matter what. I just hate them all. As far as Tennessee is concerned, Will Levis is a joke. I'm just going to say that he is the worst quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion, that's starting. You can put that anywhere. Tony Pollard should have a bounce back week this week against Miami. Miami is not a very good rushing defense. They've allowed the fifth most running points to running backs. So I expect Pollard to bounce back. And obviously, because Will Levis has struggled, I don't really like any of the wide receivers. I don't know if any of them are going to do absolutely anything versus Miami. So really, the only people I like in this game are the running backs. How about you?
I'm just gonna do actually a very bold take. The Titans have the second best passing defense this season. I'm gonna be very, very bold and say you might want to consider not playing Tyreek Hill this week. You might, if you have like say you have maybe Garrett Wilson and Rasheed Rice, maybe you sit Tyreek for those two together. I think if you have better options, you might really want to consider sitting Tyreek Hill this week.
That is a very bold take, but I absolutely agree with you, Matt. I didn't want to say it because I know he is a must start, but I'm glad you said it. I agree. I
And
absolutely agree.
Yeah, and just to put that in perspective, Tyreek Hill, he had a very, very easy drop last week. The quarterback was on whatever yardage he was on, and Tyreek Hill was not down the field. He was literally to the QB's left, like just immediate left, and he had just a clear pass, and he dropped it. So, you know, Tyreek might be a sit this week.
It looks like the Miami team is just kind of struggling to get things going, and I'm sure that their quarterback being out is not helping. Also, Skylar Thompson is dealing with a chest injury currently. If he isn't ready to go, I expect Tyler Huntley might have a chance of uh, stepping in. Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley. I do think this offense will be better with him at quarterback over Skylar Thompson, but there's just too many variables to have any certainty in this offense.
Yep, I agree. Last game is the Seahawks versus the Lions. Chana, why don't you start us off on that?
So as far as the Seahawks are concerned, um, I don't want to say they're a shocking 3-0 because they haven't played any good teams yet. I'm sorry, as I know I sound like a bitter 49ers fan. My dad's a Seahawks fan. I don't think the Seahawks team is as good as a 3-0 makes us think they are. They played bad teams. They're going against a very tough defense this week. Detroit is what number? I believe they're number 2 if I'm looking at this correctly. They're the number 1 defense against running backs. They have only allowed 138 rushing yards and have only allowed 8.83 points to running backs. That is 6 points less than second place, Matt. They are limiting these running backs. Even if Kenneth Walker is back, probably not going to do anything. Definitely not going to play Zach Charbonnet. I wouldn't imagine that he's going to be successful. And I think that this is a much improved Detroit secondary. They're showing a lot more than they did last year, where they were like the number two worst uh, defense as far as their secondary is concerned. Um, I would consider starting. Obviously, you're going to start DK Metcalf. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba still has a bunch of question marks. I don't feel comfortable starting either him or Tyler Lockett. But I would consider starting Geno Smith. Obviously, not if you have any better options, but I do think that this could potentially be a game where Geno kind of shows out and performs fairly well. He did play Detroit last year and scored 22 points. I imagine it'd be much of the same. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think Gino is a bold take. I'm not really a Gino fan. I think you're starting DK for sure. Yeah, Jackson Smith. I think he's kind of taken over Tyler Lockett's spot. So I think if you need like a wide receiver two type angle, he's a good start. And then Tyler Lockett, I think, is kind of slowly getting phased out of their offense. And then in terms of the Lions, Jared Goff, he's not performing for me in fantasy. I'm sitting him for sure. I'm a huge David Montgomery fan. You know, I think David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, you're starting no matter what, and Amon Ra, you're starting no matter what.
Yeah, you know what? I absolutely agree. I'm disappointed in Jared Goff. He hasn't scored any points this year, really, in fantasy. We expected this to be such a high powered offense, and that's in all aspects on the ground, through the air, and we just haven't seen that from Jared Goff this year. I don't know what happened. I don't know if the NFC Championship loss is really affecting them. But he has more interceptions than touchdowns at the moment, and it doesn't look like he's performing the same way he did last year, where he was the quarterback seven. So I absolutely would think about sitting him. I probably would actually sit him. I don't expect him to have a bounce back game against Seattle this week, and even if he does, there are other factors that play into it where I would absolutely sit him. The running backs are amazing, like you said, Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery, both demanding production. Gibbs 16 points last week. David Montgomery 20 points last week. They each had over 80 yards on the ground. This is a run first team. That being said, Amon Ra, still great, still a must start. You spent your first round pick on him, definitely going to get it done. I was very, very high on Jamison Williams last week. I expected more targets from him versus a poor Arizona defense, but they didn't really need it. He only saw 3 targets, so I'm gonna get off that hype train right now and wait. Like I'm gonna slow down on that. And you know what, Sam Laporta, disappointing this year to say the least. He's dealing with an ankle injury. He has not been productive, currently tight end 18, and a lot of people spent their second or third round pick on him. I'm going to avoid him too. Stay with all the guys on the ground and Amon Ra. Stay away from Jared Goff, Sam Laporta. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, I will say that I was telling you, Vitrano, about Jamison Williams. Like, I don't think he's like taking over the offense or anything, and I would liken him to Rashid Shaheed. Like, he'll catch those deep passes a couple games, but over the course of the season, he will not produce like well fantasy wise. So he'll just have like one or two huge games, and the rest of the times it'll be like Rashid Shaheed with 0 points. That's my prediction.
Yeah, and you know what? I was very high on Rashid Shaheed. I made a video talking about how good they should be this week, both him and Jamison Williams, and they disappointed. Rashid Shaheed, a little less disappointing for me. I saw he was targeted on deep balls. He had 6 targets. He was targeted a lot on deep balls, and they just couldn't bring him in. It is what it is. The production was potentially there. The volume was definitely there for him to be successful. But I think I jumped the gun a little too soon on these guys. I need to see a little bit more from both of them before I go ahead and put them into my lineups.
Yeah, and before we go ahead into like our, fun little parlay picks and maybe some power rankings, I just want to bring up Brandon Aubrey. He's my favorite kicker. I'm in 3 leagues this year. I have him in every single league, and I just want to, get your take on him, Vitrano, because he kicked a 65-yard field goal that's 1 yard off the record, and he just drilled it like he drills every single field goal. I think he might go down as like the goat kicker.
Yeah, I saw a stat on Twitter, I believe it was yesterday, that said Brandon Aubrey, with the points that he scored so far, would be currently it would be something like the quarterback 16, wide receiver 4, running back 6. Like it was some crazy numbers like that. Like that's how productive he has been at the kicking position. I know a lot of people, or not everybody, play with kickers, but he has been that good. Obviously, you said he drilled that 65 yarder. I would love to see him by the end of this year be allowed to kick a 70 yarder or further, because I do think he has the leg for it. So I think, Brandon Aubrey, it's crazy to say, but when you think about how your picks have gone so far in this year, if you would have drafted Brandon Aubrey as your kicker in the fifth, sixth round, he probably has produced more for your team than any of those guys. And it's scary to say that, but it's true. And he's just been that good.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it if you're the Cowboys. You have a guy that can pretty much kick a field goal at any point on the field. They're just gonna let him kick and he's gonna get you fantasy points because they know they can fall back on him. Like he doesn't miss. He probably does have the leg for a 70-yard field goal. Like let's be honest. He's kicking 65s like they're nothing. So he's my favorite pick. And if I go to a Cowboys game ever, like I'm getting his jersey.
It's the only Cowboy. I hate the Cowboys. It's the only player I'd probably grab. Actually, Micah Parsons has grown on me a little bit this week. He said something about Derek Carr uh, on Twitter. He has a podcast. He was talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. Uh, I believe it was Chauncey Gardner Johnson who said something about Derek Carr. Said, I don't know why everybody's so high on the Saints. They have Derek Carr as their quarterback. And Micah Parsons actually came to his defense and said, I don't understand why Derek Carr is getting all this hate. He has played very well this year. He's always been that guy. So I do hate the Cowboys, but that statement has made me enjoy Micah Parsons a little bit more.
Yeah, you gotta like the stand-up guys. That's why I like Stroud so much. He's like a stand-up guy. Um, let's see. How about we do some parlay picks for each game, Vitrano?
Yeah, I can go ahead and start with my favorite picks from this game, or from this week. We did not have a very good week, or at least I did not have a very good week picking games last week. A lot of upsets in my mind happened, uh, and there's not really any excuse for that. So I'm excited to get back to it and pick some better games this week. That being said, I have the Cowboys taking on the Giants, taking over the Giants. I have the Panthers actually beating the Bengals. I know you said that earlier. I agree with you. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Falcons to beat the Saints at home. No particular reason, just the Falcons are playing a home game. I think they bounce back here. Texans definitely over the Jaguars. Jets over the Broncos. Vikings over the Packers. The Steelers over the Colts. Um, I do have. I'm gonna pick a very surprising one. I'm gonna have the Bears over the Rams. I'm gonna choose the Eagles over the Bucks, the 49ers over the Patriots. Um, that's I know I'm a 49ers fan, but that's gonna be my lock of the week. I don't think the Patriots are good. I think I'm gonna pick the Commanders to beat the Cardinals this week. The Chiefs to beat the Chargers. I Both of these teams are horrible, but I'm going to choose the Browns over the Raiders, the Bills over the Ravens. I'm going to choose the Titans over the Dolphins, and I'm going to round it out by choosing the Lions at home over the Seahawks.
All right. Let me see, because you kind of went in a different order than what I'm looking at. So, but I do have a couple disagreements. Let's see. I'm gonna go with the Saints over the Falcons. I'm gonna say the Rams over the Bears. Yeah, the Eagles versus the Bucks. That's honestly a 50-50, I feel like, but that one's hard. You know what? I'll go with the Bucks on that just because I like Evans and Chris Godwin, and I don't think Jalen Hurts has enough offensive passing weapons. But Barkley could just carry the game on his own. That one's a hard one. But I'm gonna go with the Cardinals over the Commanders. And yeah, I'm gonna go with the 49ers over the Patriots. If the 49ers lose to the Patriots, like Vitrano might explode. He might just implode. Uh
I kid you not. I sent a tweet out to the 49ers Twitter page basically saying I can't keep doing this, man. I can't. Like I literally I just can't. The We lost a one possession game to the Vikings. Granted, the Vikings have proven to be a great team. I told one of our friends that there's no way we were going to lose this game. We were within field goal range. We were about to go up by 10, and the game was about to be out of reach. I said, and I quote, there is no way we lose this game. And I watched Ronnie Bell drop that pass, and then Matthew Stafford in 2 plays got within field goal range, and we lost the game. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep defending this team when uh, Brock Purdy and Jawan Jennings last week did everything that they can, and our secondary is blowing it, and our receivers are blowing it. Like I can't, I just can't.
yeah, that is a quote you did say, and it did hit you with some fat karma real quick. um, let's see. I agree with the rest of the picks. Did you say the Seahawks or the Lions?
I said the Lions. I think they have a better team overall. I think that the Seahawks are kind of a fraudulent 3-0 team. I'm not gonna lie.
You know, I really do agree. I think the Seahawks are inflated, like you were saying, and the Lions are just so weird to me because like they have like the QB, like he played good last year. They have the standout, first round pick in fantasy this year, wide receiver. They have two top tier running backs. They have, the standout tight end last year. They have every single offensive weapon filled, and they just don't get it done. Like I don't get it. So. I think that game could go either way too. DK Metcalf's playing pretty good this year. Definitely better than some of the games last year. But yeah, I just don't know about the Lions. Like yeah, on paper they should win, but there's just something about them. So that game is like the Bucks to me. It's really just a 50-50, I think.
Yeah, you know what? And I absolutely agree. I think it could go either way. But I do think that the Lions will definitely pull it out. I think there are a lot of 50-50 games this week. I definitely see Cleveland and the Raiders as a 50-50. I definitely see Washington, Arizona as a 50-50. I definitely see Philadelphia, Tampa Bay as a 50-50. Minnesota and Green Bay, I kind of see pretty close to a 50-50 because it's a very tough divisional matchup. The only reason I really have Minnesota is they're playing in Green Bay in September and not in December. Uh, and I know Lambeau Field can get pretty cold. I even see Cincinnati, Carolina as a 50-50, and definitely New Orleans, Atlanta as a 50-50. I think uh, this is going to be a very tough week for picking money lines and betting. So I would say go with the sure things. Don't bet on these 50-50s. This could really go either way in all aspects.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to go on the 50-50s, you might want to just flip a coin. All right, Vetrano,
Literally.
I think that's the about the end of this week's podcast. Any closing remarks or anything else you want to talk about?
No, that was pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening to our podcast week one. I was very happy with the results that we got and the amount of support that we got from you guys. I would say send in some requests, like some fantasy advice. Send in like players to talk about. We would love to have some players to talk about in more depth. I think that would be great for us. I did set up a part of our support on our podcast. There are ways for them to support us in kind of like a Patreon of sorts. But overall, just thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate taking you guys taking the time to listen and while we step into this new venture.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And if you want to send us an email, it's thefantasyreserve@protonmail.com. All right, everyone, have a good night and thank you for listening. We'll be back next week.